welcome. Today we are going to dig into a juicy demand letter that I received demanding that a broker pay for repairs that were not made prior to a closing. Let's take a look at the demand letter, the TAR form contract, and state law, and let's just see if there's any grounds for this sort of a demand. All right, so here's the scoop. So the seller agreed to make certain electrical repairs prior to the closing. He promised to use an electrician who was licensed and to provide all of the receipts and information that the buyer could use after the closing. Unfortunately, about a year and a half after the purchase, the buyer receives word from an electrical company that he's going to have the entire house rewired, and included in these repairs are about $6,000 worth of items that the seller said that he would complete prior to closing. So the buyer hired an attorney, sent a demand letter not only to the seller but to my broker as well, demanding payment for those repairs. So let's dig in. Let's take a look at the TAR form. What does it say? This transaction took place about a year and a half ago. So we're in the 2021 form. Let's take a look at what the 2021 says about inspections and repairs. Section in which the TAR form handles repairs is Section 7, and it rolls over into Section 8 as well. And Section 7 states that the buyer has a right to make certain repairs. Now, of course, it lays out the ground rules for those inspections, who's liable for what during that time period. But the buyer is provided for an opportunity of usually about 10 days, maybe 15 days to conduct inspections. And if at the end of the inspection period, the buyer decides that they do want to have certain repairs made, then the parties enter into what's known as the resolution period. It actually lays out a time frame, which is usually about 3 to 5 days. It's a negotiating period between the buyer and the seller, whereby they say, okay, well, they go back and forth on these repair replacement proposals, and then they settle down on exactly what the repairs are going to be and when they have to be made. That's actually documented in the TAR form repair replacement amendment. After that amendment is signed, then the seller is expected to go ahead and hire the contractors, the vendors to make those repairs. And then the buyer is provided with an opportunity during what's known as the final inspection. That is typically a few days, sometimes a week prior to closing, where the buyer gets to go into the property, make those final inspections to make sure that all of the repairs were made and that the property is in as good or better condition than it was on the date of the binding agreement. The key to answering the question of whether the seller is still liable for repairs a year and a half after closing lies in the last sentence of Section 8 that has to do with the final inspection. It states as follows: closing of the sale constitutes acceptance of the property in its condition as of the time of closing, unless otherwise noted in writing. What does that mean, unless otherwise noted in writing? There's really only two options here. Number one, in Tennessee, we have a little something known as the merger doctrine, and that means that all clauses of the contract merge into the deed at the time of closing. So anything that was in the contract and needs to be carried over has to be listed in the deed, or else it merges in and the deed controls. The other way that you can note these repairs after the closing is in something known as an escrow agreement. The title company holds a certain amount of money in escrow. We have an escrow agreement drafted. It promises that certain repairs are going to be made within a certain time frame. If they are made, we'll pay the invoices. If they're not made, we pay all the money to the buyer so that the buyer can go and have those repairs done. It's really simple. It's really two options here. Neither one did this particular buyer take advantage of. And so therefore, unfortunately, there's really nothing that can be done. The seller is just simply not liable. The buyer had an opportunity at that final inspection to request the information and to examine the repairs. And if he wasn't satisfied, he would have had to make his demands at that time. Now, let's take a look at the broker. Is the broker ever liable for repairs that a seller didn't make? The answer is absolutely not. This broker is not a party to the agreement. The broker is not responsible for any repairs to the seller's property ever, ever, ever. So if you guys have any questions, you wanted me to dig into something that you've got, if you've had a question pop up and you want me to address that on here, let me know. I'd be glad to take a look at your situation, and I'll see you on here next time when we dig into something else real estate law related.